I'll put it up on my blog and tweet it out. I don't know what Michael's doing with videos, but he's found them. Yeah, no.
Unfortunately, that's not your best profile. Could we have that moved over? No, but you're much more attractive from the left, as I look. I like to put people at their ease. Okay, it is. Yeah, we've got some stuff at the top there. So Charlotte, please.
You want me to go first?
No, I want you to sit here. Oh, are you going to be?
Sorry, I'm just going to try and choose the file.
All right, okay, and then you'll join us. Okay, that's great. Good afternoon. So we will be here until 2:45 when we have a break. It is an hour, but we have 3 speakers who will be speaking to us this afternoon on the challenges from the Chalkface. I'm going to invite each to give their own 30-second introduction, so I will just give names at the moment. We have Charlotte Vardy, who is just sorting out technical glitches. We have Andy Lewis, and we have Father John Millar. And so I'm going to ask Andy to go first. And Andy will be speaking religious literacy and the purpose of RE. He'll speak for 10 to 15 minutes, after which he will cease. We might have just a couple of minutes for burning questions immediately afterwards, and they will indeed then cease, and we'll listen to the next speaker. And we hope to end up with about 10 minutes at the end to have a general discussion. Okay? So, Andy, thank you very much.
Thank you. First of all, I think any of you that were in Stephen Tierney's session earlier, when he said as a head teacher, he felt a little bit underqualified. I'm just an RE teacher. I'm second in the RE department in a Catholic all-girls school in Upminster, which is Brentwood Diocese, in the London Borough of Havering. So I travelled quite a way to be with you today, but it's a real pleasure to do that. Thank you.
I'm based in Carlisle. I'm involved in the chaplaincy here, actually, a little bit on the side, but my main role is as chaplain at Newman Catholic School, which is the state school in town. I'm also the Vice Chair of Governors at one of our primary schools in town, so I've got a spread between different types of chaplaincy across the city here.
Thank you, Charlotte.
And my name's Charlotte Vardy. I'm not a Catholic. Feeling a bit of the odd one out today. I come from an Anglican background. I've been teaching in schools. I've been head of RE. I've also been Director of Studies, and more recently I've been running events around the world in terms of RE for students of religious studies and philosophy, and doing consultancy work with various different schools as well on RS policy.
Andy, would you like to go first?
Educating Today and Tomorrow, A Renewing Passion, was published in 2014 to be discussed as part of this Synod on the Family later this year. It highlighted 12 challenges to Catholic schools worldwide: identity, community, dialogue, a learning society, integral education, limited means and resources, pastoral challenges, religious formation for young people, multi-religious and multicultural societies, teachers' lifelong training, places and resources for teacher training, and legal challenges. I'd very highly recommend reading it in full, but I will attempt to touch on some of these challenges in my presentation today. So what are some of the key challenges for Catholic teachers in our schools? For me, it's really important to highlight we are in a very exciting time in secondary education. New GCSEs based on an annex written by the CES with new syllabuses, in the case of AQA, written by Philip Robinson of the CES and Ant Howie of St Mary's University. Other syllabuses also seem to have had genuine Catholic input. Catholic teachers and lecturers are also working on textbooks and to resource these. However, it is still a worry that Catholic schools may be looking to a 25 rather than 50% Roman Catholic option, or to study Christianity instead of Catholic Christianity at GCSE. If we cannot teach our faith beyond what's perceived to be relevant and engaging, wars and willies, as I've heard it referred to, we do have a real problem. If we cannot make our own faith interesting, exciting, what hope is there for the future of our church? A-level religious studies, again, has undergone changes making either scripture or systematic study compulsory, alongside the popular philosophy and ethics. This should surely be good for Catholic schools, yet some of the boards appear to be shying from the scripture options. We could have a situation where the majority of Catholic schools do not teach in-depth scripture in examination classes. Despite these concerns, which I believe Charlotte will be looking at in more detail, it is vital to highlight that never before has there been such collaboration between the CS, HEIs and teachers such as myself. I do believe this is a fantastic opportunity, and I hope it's one the Catholic community embrace. Through support and resourcing and working more collaboratively, maybe we can work together to address these concerns. Catholic education does remain good, people want it and will get baptised for it. This creates many problems for us as a Catholic community. The London Oratory School remains under pressure for an admissions policy, which I think has now been changed, that questioned the age of baptism. They are not alone. I'm sure many schools have significant numbers of students who were baptised around the school application age. With our increasingly limited budgets, do we need more stringent application processes to ensure a more genuinely Catholic school population? Are we turning away other Catholics who are more deserving, or are the problems more practical than that? Religious literacy. There is a huge variation in my Year 7 classes, whereby much basic knowledge is just simply missing. Anecdotal evidence from those in the classroom suggests that some students do not even know the basics of Bible narrative, including Jesus' death and resurrection. My own Year 7s were confused about what diocese they belonged to, who the current bishop was, or if John Paul II was still Pope. Subject perception is also still an issue for Catholic schools. Despite the often non-optional nature of GCSE-RS in the vast majority of our Catholic schools, teachers will still need to answer the age-old question that goes along the lines, but I don't want to be a priest or a nun. I genuinely believe that RE teachers in a Catholic school should be leading on teaching practice, delivering the most engaging and relevant lessons to raise their subjects' perception. Yet we are not immune from the nationwide shortage of RE specialists and budgets that will not allow for the support of ongoing training. Low perception and status can also come from within the school, with non-Catholic staff devaluing the subject. This is perhaps most concerning when they are members of the senior leadership teams. Numeracy and literacy one-to-ones often happen during RE, as the students will be fine. One RE teacher reported to me that she'd already lost more than 10 lessons with her Year 10 GCSE RS class due to these interventions. They may also come from parents, which may, but not necessarily, link to one of my earlier points. They want a good Catholic education, but perhaps not the RE. Is Catholic RE as rigorous and academic as it should be? We've just heard a comment of someone talking about 16-year-olds doing colouring in their lessons. This is an issue nationally that I would love to say Catholic RE escapes. Engaging is not fun and games. It is accessible, purposeful and ambitious. Relevant is not down with the kids. It is carefully linked to the subject as a whole, linked across the curriculum and connected to the lived world. This is a direct link on the subject's perception by students, colleagues and parents. RE, as the core of the core, is something indicated in both Vatican documents and the curriculum directory. RE should be at the heart of the Catholic school. However, does RE truly sit alongside, or even above, English, maths and science? And perhaps controversially, should it? What is our priority? Ensuring 10% curriculum time for RE, but doing this by cutting time away from other core subjects. Everything at our disposal says we must be educating the whole child, and it is vital they leave our schools with the qualifications that will set them up for a truly fulfilled life. Catholic schools pride themselves on being more ethnically diverse than community schools, but this is also increasingly multi-faith as well as multicultural. For a range of often complex reasons, this situation exists. Location, the appeal of single-sex education, faith over non-faith. This can present a set of interesting challenges. To what extent, if any, should schools be adapting to their intake? The variation in diocese provision is vast. This has a natural knock-on effect in schools. However, where diocese provision is not as strong, perhaps worryingly, there is little idea about what is happening in our schools. I think it would be naive to suggest a Section 48 inspection would give the full picture. Do we really know what type of Catholicism is being promoted in our schools? I'm very pleased that CS have Philip Robinson working as a full-time secondary advisor from September 2015. He does realise many of our challenges, in part because I'm frequently telling him. The old hierarchy is also now being challenged with the new democracy of the internet. It is possible for Catholic RE teachers to be working together via email, Twitter and Facebook. And they do. Obviously we must remember our bishops and their appointed advisors, but this new opportunity should be embraced rather than shut down. It has allowed me to start up a hub to support Catholic RE nationally called catholicresource.co.uk, and I do hope you got the flyers earlier. If not, see me later. This site aims to bring together the very best of what already exists and to directly support teachers of RE nationally, in particular for the new GCSEs and A-levels. Some would argue that we should have more control over the RE content for Key Stage 4 and 5. However, the CES did write the content for the annexes for the GCSE, and Catholic HIs had a significant contribution to the new A-level. We are still in a situation where we are covering a legal obligation, RE, with an external qualification, GCSE Religious Studies. However, personally, I'm very happy that the suggestion for Catholic schools to step away from GCSEs and A-levels did not happen. It would not have been right for our students. At primary level, many suggest that the programme Come and See has improved standards. However, from my own view, I have not noticed a significant improvement in religious literacy from upcoming Year 7s. I'd imagine it suffers the same problems of the previous scheme Here I Am. In schools where RE is a priority, with Catholic staff confident with the faith, it will be delivered well. In schools where it is not, it isn't. At Key Stage 3, the main three options feature one that is increasingly outdated, icons, one that is well established and resourced, the Way, the Truth and the Life, and the newest scheme, People of God. Obviously other dioceses still do their own thing. Realistically, all RE teachers will now need to work back from the GCSE annexes to deliver the best Key Stage 3 RE. There will be increased pressure on budgets. Our school alone is going to see in real terms a cut of about £500,000 next year. The lack of specialists will continue and our intake will continue to change. All of these are major considerations for Catholic leaders. RE in the Catholic school is not just in the RE classroom. It would be naive to claim so. However, with an increasingly high number of non-Catholic teachers in the Catholic school, are the RE department, deputy and head, left as the sole bastions of Catholicity? The diversity within, in the new GCSE, will lead increased focus on Roman Catholicism in non-Catholic schools. Too often this is obsessed with our sexual ethics and our lists of do-nots. How can the teaching of Catholicism in community schools be improved? Do we care? The fact that many Catholics are working in these community schools and many of our young people are students in these schools means we should care how our faith is perceived and taught. I organised a large subject knowledge conference in London in March, the London RE Hub. I ensured Catholic representation in a session that was very well attended by non-Catholics and Catholics alike. Our faith is fascinating to the outsider. I feel passionately that we should evangelise. I try to be an example through my words and my deeds. My MA dissertation was on being more Christ-like and gospel-driven in our approach to rewards and sanctions, something I try to live out every day. I talk about going to Lourdes with the HCPT and other charitable work I'm involved in. We are all called to be a witness in our everyday lives. However, I do not feel we should be proselytising. We should give the opportunity for the young people in our schools to come to the faith and provide good reasons why they should. Yet we are not there to force or guilt or produce a lifelong resentment of Catholicism. We are not there to replace the catechesis of the parish or the home, even though we may be the primary educators of the faith. We are the option for the poor, and that may well be the spiritually poor. We share the good news. We hope our students will hear and accept the word. One area that's been highlighted in the press of late is the issue of LBGT students. We need to work out how to be sensitive and supportive to the needs of all those in our schools during their formative and often difficult enough teenage years. We truly are the face of Christ. To conclude, we do have much work to do. We need to work more collaboratively, sharing the good work that we do. One thing that I feel very strongly about is that we should not be looking to become a more insular sect. Cherie Blair, in her 2009 documentary Christianity History, suggested that the Catholic Church is on the verge of becoming an increasingly smaller, increasingly pious and exclusive sect. We are working towards the common good. One example that hit home for me is when I visited Ethiopia with CAFOD in 2007 and found that in the city of Mekelle in northern Ethiopia, there were less than 200 Catholics in the population. The city had a population of 250,000, yet over 70% of the city's children were educated in Catholic schools. Maybe we can't afford such a luxury in the UK. However, I don't think we should be ready to give up just yet. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any burning questions that you'd like to raise now? Gentlemen at the
Maybe
back.
just a comment. I too am an RE teacher from London, and your anecdote about your year 7, I think we have to be careful as secondary school teachers. One of our classic complaints every year: what do they learn in primary school? And of course, we speak to our colleagues in primary schools. And what are they doing? They were writing fantastic essays, doing great work in year 5 or year 6. You get to primary, get to secondary school, they take a step backwards. So I think as professionals, we have to be very careful of going into that whole kind of rhetoric of like, oh, they know nothing, and not knowing where they are. And so year 7s, and lots of us need to be reminded of things, and we're not actually talking kind of clearly, what do you know? And I just would challenge that anecdote.
Oh, no, absolutely, and I would 100% agree.
It's a nice bit of rhetoric, but in reality, of like, come on, they're just year 7s, and religious literacy, just kind of let's be careful. So I know English teachers really complain, what have they done in primary?
Absolutely, I do absolutely take that on board, and I agree that perhaps it is a little superficial, and there was lots of things they do know, but I think they should know what the diocese they belong to. I do think they should probably know the name of the Pope, personally. And I think, yes, there's lots of things that maybe they do forget. Maybe that, there's a lot to do with transition. I know they do lots of good things do go on in primary school. But for me, I still do think some of those key facts they should know. Again, I've been asked, when you ask a student what parish they belong to, they answer back, what's a parish? And again, it's...
So then if you said, what church do you go to? Oh yeah, I go to that church.
Absolutely.
So maybe they might not use the word parish, but in fact, like, oh yeah, I know. Oh yeah, but, do you know Monsignor so? Oh, you mean Father John? Yeah, of course I do. Yeah, and so I think we have to be careful the questions we ask children, and of course some of that is increasing literacy. They know how to replace the words, but I suppose we're educational successes, and we're dealing with, and we've been through the system, and we've got our degrees, we've gone back as teachers, and we have to give the scaffolding, and that's what literacy is about, to help them be able to get those different words, and make, again, the skill of us as teachers, are we asking the right questions to elicit the right answers, and that's, I've just been challenging that.
Gentleman at the back.
Can I just come in on that? I'm a deputy head of a primary school, but I was a secondary teacher last September, and there's truth to what you are both saying. The key to success and that is the transition. You need to pick these children up from year 4, year 5, instead of coming in with a couple of weeks left to make sure that they want to come to your secondary school. That's the first key to making sure that the transition unit's there. Also, I just came back from Ampleforth, we'd been on a residential trip there, and we asked the children what's the biggest Catholic church in England, and a child put the hand up and said the Church of England. We said, no, that's incorrect. Anybody else know? Hand straight back up, the Church of England. 3 times the same response came out, the Church of England. What I've noticed about the primary school curriculum with RE is it's very good, it's there, it's black and white in a book, but there is not that opportunity for the conversation that we have all probably received from home. And sadly a lot of these children do not receive that from home. And the terminology is not there in the discussion. To have a child who, a perfect example was, why haven't you taught about different faiths? And the teacher said, the year's not finished yet, we've still got time left on the curriculum. We have 3 weeks. not enough time to get these children ready for what comes next. Whereas the secondary school could have stepped in year 5, at closer links, because we are one church, one school, and says, you know what, this is where we need the children to be. We can help you get to that point by doing this. And it's similar to what we've mentioned earlier on. It's that closer links. It's not a case of one school, another school. It's we are the same school. And it is true, with literacy, I was one of those that said a child never, and I've come back, and even the work that my children produced this year is far greater than a lot that my GCSE children last year were creating. But it's inconsistencies across the board, inconsistencies in the curriculum, inconsistencies in assessment, and this is where we need to work closer.
Could
Clearly
we?
is the one pathway.
Okay. I think we'll have to hold all three of you until later because we do have others to listen to. Okay, so we'll come back later. And Charlotte, thank you.
Stand over here because I'm fashionable. I have Okay, so I'm going to be talking about curriculum reform and the extent to which it's good for Catholic RE. And for those of you who aren't clear, obviously we're talking about curriculum reform in relation to GCSE and A-level, but also in a broader sense. So I'm going to try and cover all three very quickly. Obviously back in February we had the new criteria for the GCSE religious studies that were released, and obviously they were developed in conjunction with the CES, and the CES welcomed them. And basically they say now that from GCSE RS, from September 2016, all students will have to study 2 religions, and that's anywhere between, as a total, 50 and 75% of the whole, and for the remainder of the time they can choose to study texts and or the philosophy of religion and ethics combined. Now this is quite a big change for religious studies because of course traditionally schools for the last few years have been focusing almost entirely on philosophy of religion and ethics in large numbers, not so much in the Catholic sector but certainly outside, and this is pulling them back to obviously covering more content in terms of the systematic study of religion, more content in terms of the text. Now, positives about that, obviously it's about academic rigour. That was the aim initially, to try and reform the curriculum, to try and increase academic rigour. There were a lot of criticisms of GCSE religious studies that it was all about what do you think without very much content, and this was an attempt to try and inject a certain amount of core content there, and so it was going to be about knowledge. Obviously contemporary relevance, it's important that students have religious literacy, knowledge about what religions believe and why. But there are concerns as well, and those include those of religious studies teachers, that it's about accessibility, how students will want to study the curriculum, because obviously not so much in Catholic schools, but certainly outside, religious studies is an increasingly optional choice at GCSE. Will students want to do the subject if it's not philosophy and ethics, but it is about studying the external manifestations of religions or doing texts? Also, it's very difficult. The standards, obviously, may well go up. That was the concern. And, of course, other people were raising questions about whether this really is all about academic rigour, and whether reducing religious studies, which has been about broad, if you like, ideas-based discussions to a list of things that they should know and tick off, is that really about increasing rigour, or is it just about, if you like, making it easier to assess? And there are two different things there. So there are some various concerns that Catholic schools may or may not share. There's obviously a teacher subject knowledge deficit, Andy's already mentioned that, and a recruitment crisis. To what extent do teachers have the ability to teach the new GCSE specs well? Is learning experience, are results going to be impacted by that change? Obviously specifications are assuming a rather phenomenological approach, and for those of you who aren't RE specialists, that means looking very much at religion from the outside and thinking about the phenomena of it as you might experience it going in as an outsider. So is that compatible with a faith schools approach, with a Catholic approach, looking at religion as being about worship places, liturgies, pilgrimages, books? Is that really what faith is about? Or actually is it about rather something else? And can a focus on externals actually give people the wrong impression about what we're doing? Also, it can be rather repetitious, because obviously Key Stage 3 curricula can be about looking at the externals of religion. Are we doing the same at Key Stage 4? Can that actually be off-putting in that sense? Obviously, forces outstanding Catholic departments to change. You know, we have got some great Catholic schools doing some fantastic work, and this is a change that's been foisted on everybody, and is going to force good schools to change what they're doing as much as bad ones. Early and reduced time GCSE. Many Catholic schools have taken advantage of this, as a way of trying to get students an extra qualification without investing the full amount of time and energy into actually achieving it, this is obviously going to have to stop. And many managers have not recognised that yet. Some religious studies departments haven't recognised it yet, but they're going to hit a brick wall if they try and carry on doing GCSE religious studies in reduced time years early and things like that. GCSE specs, obviously, they're being delayed and they're not necessarily going to be out in time for people to start teaching if they are doing the 3-year spec. And even in 10% curriculum time, if you're actually going to do justice to the content of the new GCSE and a proper relevance to the curriculum directives and the curriculum guide, are you actually going to have sufficient time to cover all of that well in the time? And finally, of course, the budgetary demands, which we all know are so pressing. Now, A-level, of course, is another kettle of fish entirely. At the same time, the curriculum criteria were released. At the same time, they were consulted upon. And that consultation was a difficult one because it would have seen people have to choose between, basically, it would have combined philosophy of religion and ethics into a social science option and forced people to choose either texts or the phenomenological study of religion alongside it. And that was changed during the consultation period, and now we have a situation where students will have to take 3 out of 4 options rather than 2 out of 3, and they will have to do either philosophy of religion or ethics for the first time. They could do both, but they will also have to broaden it out and not just study philosophy of religion and ethics, but also either text or a religion as well. And I think that's really a very good thing. I think it's been a very good result. So all students from September 2016 will have to cover 3 out of 4 of those different options. But that obviously does come with some compromises as well. So positives, academic rigour and breadth, I think everybody would agree that broadening out from the philosophy of religion and ethics is a good thing for our subject area. It's certainly better preparation for the university TRS courses. I think most people would definitely agree with that. But there are concerns, and I think it's important to confront those. The breadth comes at the expense of depth, so to what extent are we trading one off against the other, and are we actually going towards more rigour? If you look at the criteria and the content and think about what the boards are doing with those, it's actually reduced the content of, for example, the philosophy of religion and ethics, which I know very well, quite substantially. And if you compare the OCR current board specification for philosophy of religion and ethics with what's actually going to be replaced with, it's very minimalistic in comparison. So are we actually going for more rigour, or actually is the breadth actually making it less in depth? Obviously philosophy, because many students can't offer philosophy as a separate option. Although we're increasing the preparation for TRS at university, that comes at the expense of other degrees that are related. And obviously we all know that A-levels don't just serve one master, they serve lots. Students might be put off. And of course, also, because we're phasing out AS level RS, that's going to have a big impact on numbers as well. So Catholic schools might consider, first of all, some teachers won't have the expertise that's necessary. There's a recruitment crisis, obviously, and recent graduates and NQTs, particularly because they'll have come out of the philosophy and ethics model, won't necessarily have the expertise that's necessary. And the resources may be a problem as well, because they just don't exist at the moment, and whether they will actually be created, at least in time for the first few years, is a question. The content may repeat, that's a concern. A-level obviously has no second religion. Philosophy and ethics content slimmed down a lot, and certainly those schools that have been advertising A-level religious studies as philosophy, they're really going to have trouble with that in the future. And it's very difficult to say, obviously, how the levels of response might differ. I'm going to suggest just towards the end here that there's actually an opportunity on all this, and I'm going to be a little bit radical and suggest something that perhaps people won't have considered, and that is that in the curriculum reforms there could be some possible good news for Catholic schools, in that the A-level offers a really, really good qualification that actually maps onto the curriculum directory aims very, very well. And bearing in mind that Catholic schools are in the fairly unique position of actually offering that 10%, not just lower down the school, but also right the way through the sixth form as well, could that not offer Catholic schools rather an opportunity? Because we all know that funding cuts are on the horizon in a very significant way. We all know that in real terms it's going to be very difficult for Catholic sixth forms to continue to offer the 10% of curriculum time on top of the A-levels when the funding that they're being allocated barely covers 3 A-levels as it is. So if the Catholics wanted to approach this, schools wanted to approach this imaginatively, one possibility might be to actually devise a 7-year Catholic studies course leading towards AS and or A-level, and bypassing GCSE altogether. This is my radical suggestion. There's no reason why you'd have to do GCSE religious studies. Why not teach everybody towards AS or A-level? Because actually the AS and A-level course offers Catholics a really good model and a means of external assessment. So that's my radical suggestion, just to close it.
Thank you very much. Do we have any radical questions for Charlotte as well, as a result of that?
It's probably not a question, but it's probably more of a concern. Because I'm a teacher of Vardy, I'm concerned next year about getting all of this ready for September 2016.
Terrifying, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, that's, and you know, I follow Andy on Twitter, and I've got to be honest, Andy's really good for sharing his resources.
Yeah.
And I think what Andy's been talking about is going to be really important as Catholic teachers in RE across the UK, that we kind of swap stuff and use stuff.
Luckily, a few people have listened to my idea, and I can't really say too much more at this stage, but what we're hoping is HIs in particular are going to get on board with this. Just the slight difficulty the CS have as a supportive organisation is that anything they were to put out would need essentially kind of an online imprimatur, whereas if we can put together something under a different guise, we can try our best. Everything is good, but teachers still have a professional responsibility. But I think you're absolutely right with the budgets, and textbooks are not going to be ready. We need to work together. Catholic teachers need to, be working with HIs, with faith communities, with charities. Everyone needs to be pulling in to make good Catholic RE. And if we work together as a community, we can.
Any others for Charlotte? Okay. Father, thank you.
Very much. I've been asked to speak about the challenges of chaplaincy. As I said, I'm a secondary school chaplain, but I also have some involvement in primary school work as well. I want to set it in context in a sense. The schools I'm working in, the percentage of Catholics, this is even baptised Catholics, is extremely low. We're talking 30% maybe. So it'd be a very different context from you, Andy. And of that, the practising Catholics are even smaller again. Absolutely, almost minimal, really. So to start off with, I want to look at what chaplaincy should be according to the Church's own law. When I was ordained, and the bishop told me I was going to be chaplain to Newman, I got a long letter with all my responsibilities and duties as a chaplain. I'm sure Father Billing wrote that beautifully for me. So it says, a chaplain is a priest that is entrusted with the pastoral care of a special portion of Christ's faithful. I want to tease that out a little bit to understand what it might mean in the context of a school. So chaplaincy is first of all then an intra-ecclesial arrangement. It's something going on the inside of the church. A chaplain is someone within the ordinary structure of the church's governance and pastoral care of its own people, much like a parish priest really. My list of responsibilities as a chaplain is very similar to that which a parish priest or an assistant priest in a parish might get. This pastoral care, as defined by the Code of Canon Law, includes proclaiming the Word of God, therefore catechesis, assemblies, some link to the work of the RE department. It involves hearing confessions, therefore a personal and private bond with members of the school community and their own inner journey of faith and growth in the moral life. It includes the celebration of the other sacraments, particularly Holy Mass. So in this understanding, what the Church is presenting when we're appointed as chaplains, a school's almost like a parish in miniature. It's providing, outside of the ordinary parish times, when our kids and our staff aren't in our parishes, what a parish normally offers. Spiritual support, the sustenance of the sacraments, and the content of the faith being delivered to form our hearts. There is a sense in which the school chaplain then does the job of the parish priest when the parish priest isn't able to get to his own people. So for my people in Carlisle, I'm gathering at Newman, from different parishes across the city, from 9 till 3:30 on a weekday, I'm essentially their parish priest. When they have a spiritual crisis, when there's something going on, I'm the man on the ground there. You can see, therefore, why the Church defines a chaplain as a priest. By theological formation and the sacred powers given him at ordination, he's the only one, in a sense, that can do the job. I want to put a proviso on that. This isn't to denigrate at all the work of our lay chaplains, which I know throughout our diocese work extremely hard and do an extremely good job in supporting these things in a similar role but slightly distinct from that of a priest. That's where the first challenge comes, I think, is understanding what a chaplain does, and also having simply enough priests on the ground to be there when I've spoken to lay chaplains. They ring round parishes, they simply can't get a priest to come in and do part of that work, a part of that work that only the priest can do. And this is our first problem with chaplaincy. We simply don't have the people to cover the number of the institutions that we're still trying to run in this fashion. To look at the challenge in a broader way. The assumption in what the Church puts in canon law when it talks about chaplaincy is that all of the pupils and teachers are in fact Catholics. It says the chaplain is a pastor to Christ's faithful. In fact, it assumes they're practicing Catholics. We all know that's far from the case. Even in schools where it's maybe 100% baptised Catholics, we know it's far from the case that they're all at Mass on a Sunday.
Absolutely.
In fact, stepping into a Catholic school as a priest or as a lay chaplain can feel like stepping into a foreign land, particularly if you're not an educational professional, someone who's got teacher training. At a very simplistic level, an example is if you step into a school you've never been in before, the kids don't even know what to call you. Who's that strange man in the funny outfit down the corridor? They don't even know at that level sometimes. It's like a little sacrament of the fact that our schools are not in reality these mini parishes with the proclamation of the Word of God and the celebration of the sacraments. As the school is lacking in this way, lacking a basic understanding maybe of the chaplain's work because of this. You know, if you've got teachers who aren't themselves Catholic and don't appreciate the wonder that is the Word of God being proclaimed to our pupils, or the importance of them being able to go to confession and unburden their souls to Christ in that sacrament, they, without meaning anything by it, without meaning any harm, can so often undervalue the work and importance of the chaplains, both priest and lay, working in the school. The results of the work of a chaplain, growth in holiness, conversion of hearts, the theological virtues of faith, hope and love, which are nourished partly by the RE department, particularly in terms of the content of the faith, but apart from that, they can't really be assessed. These aren't measurable. They're not going to go on your GCSE results. And so sometimes resourcing a chaplaincy department, because it's not going to go on the results page, can be undervalued. Heads and governors can think, well, you know, teachers aren't going to see that when they're looking at which school to send our kids to. These results, so often hidden in the depth of both the teachers and the students' hearts, are what chaplaincy, what priesthood in any context, is really about. In our school environments, sometimes the SLT aren't looking for these things in their own lives. Some are, and are excellent. There are some very, very good SLT out across the country, wonderful, faithful, practicing Catholics, but some aren't. And so in that sense, they just don't understand what we're about. These fruits don't register, and so chaplaincy can seem like maybe just a waste of time. The second challenge, I think, is not so much a challenge to the chaplain himself or herself in the case of a lay chaplain, but the challenge of the chaplain to the school. In his duty of proclaiming the Word of God, the chaplain will have to sometimes speak uncomfortable truths. A priest chaplain is in some ways not answerable to the SLT, as my appointment comes from the bishop, but a lay chaplain is employed by the school directly, so that's a different setup for them. And how does that hamper our ability to preach the gospel when we're employed by people we might need to challenge with that gospel message? I'm sure this is going to become more of a problem in relation to changing legislation and the different ethical questions of our time, particularly those surrounding marriage and family life. The chaplain can speak into what is sometimes a hostile audience on some of these particular issues, because what the chaplain is saying contradicts what some of the staff and some of the children and their families are doing outside of the school context. So what is chaplaincy like? Most of the time for me, it feels as if I'm not a chaplain to a Catholic community, to this parish in miniature, but rather more like a missionary going out on the mission field somehow. I should get a white cassock for that. But this is in schools run by the church, for the church, supposedly with the people in them being full members of the church. It feels, in fact, and I'm convinced it's true, that we're presenting the faith to people, both staff and students, who in some cases have never heard it before until they step through our front door. And sometimes we do an amazing job at doing that. Sometimes we don't do so well. We're reaching out sometimes to a large group of people within our schools who have no faith at all, or just sort of natural feeling that God exists and there might be something, but nothing much beyond that. The effect this has on the individual jobs we have to do in a school is enormous. Whole school masses are a nightmare. In a meeting with senior leadership recently, I had to explain to them that my experience of whole school mass was in fact sacrilegious. That is the word I used, and I used it deliberately and very carefully. Partly to do with the format, and partly to do with the people sat in front of me. How can we expect, how can we force children, and I think it's a real question, to participate in the Christian mystery of the Eucharist when they don't believe it at all? And I think this is particularly for staff, it becomes more difficult. How can we force staff to come into a room and to celebrate Mass with us, the Mass which proclaims and celebrates our faith, and to join in the responses to lead the kids, when in their hearts they don't believe it. They don't believe what is being said in front of them. This can go further down the chain to assemblies, because if they're common acts of worship, if we're having collective worship every morning, is it really collective worship when half the people in the room won't join in the prayer? I think, though, there are some great things. There are some moments when you do feel like a pastor in a Christian context. There are wonderful moments when I'm really surprised and really do find I'm the priest of a small, if fragile, small Catholic community, a cell of the church, if you like, when you see converts, wonderful kids who ask of their own free will to be baptised, when you see people coming to confession. So it is there, and we are doing great work. But the challenge is, how do we tie that in? How do we adjust the model to address the people who are in front of us today?
Thank you very much. Burning ones for Father Millar, Father John, and then we'll get onto the discussion for all three. Yes.
Can I just ask, we're going to have a whole school mass in about a fortnight's time. Are you suggesting those are scrapped, or that you'll limit who comes into the whole school mass?
What we have done, I'll give you an example, is to change the format of them. Part of our problem was trying to force a whole school mass in a vast amount of kids in front of you. We've cut it down into smaller chunks of kids, which makes engaging with them a little bit easier. But I've still got the question of, these kids in front of me who really don't believe what we're doing. Is it we need to prepare them better for the Mass? That's an open question. But we've altered the way we do it to try and speak to them more clearly in a way that's more accessible for them.
Thank you. Yes.
You talked about preparing them, that's the challenge that we face. We're in the RE department, and where does the preparation time come from? Who do you think should be the people to prepare them for the Mass?
That's a great question, because it's the same problem in our school curriculum time gets cut out when you're trying to teach GCSE curriculum or something, and I'm coming banging on your door and saying, we've got a maths next week, you need to go through this, this and this with them. I wonder whether there needs to be an acknowledgement by senior leadership that maybe something like citizenship needs to be cut in the timetable and some time put into the timetable for that catechetical and pastoral work timetabled for kids in the school.
Okay, thank you. Just by way of introduction, so this is good. I've surpassed my expectations. We have 14 minutes for common discussion and dialogue. Just listening there, if I could attempt to give a context for all three. I think I'll take Father John's image of saying that he senses that he should have a white cassock, not a black cassock. I don't want to concentrate on dress. We have purple socks at the front. No, I don't want to concentrate on dress. but I think to take the image of the mission, because that is it's a very Catholic term. The mission. You mentioned also evangelisation. So let's perhaps have that as our overriding colour for this discussion, and so to put it into that colour. What Charlotte has presented to us are things almost beyond our control, but because we're within it and we've entered into dialogue, we've been able to form it much to our advantage, but not totally to our advantage. I think that would be a summing up of, you'd be fair with that. And that is being a missionary community in a cultural context which is not completely under our control, but is a model of a good moment for us there. I think also within the teaching of RE, so we would recognise that we are again speaking into a cultural conversation which very much uses language which is alien to us, or we might be in danger of using language alien to them, but we would recognise as a culture that needs to hear what Jesus Christ, the Word of God, is saying within that culture, and so it's engaging there. And so since I've used Father John's image anyway, I think we see quite clearly how being a chaplain and a chaplaincy team is a moment of missionary activity on behalf of the church and the interface with culture. So that's my little introduction. With the people who'd like to have further comments and questions, I'm aware that I cut off the issue which we could sum up as in transition. So I think Pauline, you wanted something. Do you want to revisit that question
I
then?
wouldn't mind, because as primary school we're often lambasted by secondary schools that we don't prepare them across the curriculum, and yet our year sixes go up and they say, oh, we're bored because we did that with you and we did this with you. But when we're looking at RE in the primary school, I notice I don't say faith or ethos, I say RE. We are restricted because we're inspected, and we have in Carlisle the way, the truth, and the life. Now it is changing. We've been allowed recently to add and augment to it, but we have very rigid curriculum that we have to deliver. We have data, and we have to reach the data levels because that's what we're judged on. The Catholicity of the school is judged as well, and that's changed again recently, Father, hasn't it? The Catholicity side has got a little bit more weight. But I was at RuPaul the other day, which was moderation for primary school, and we've been told that next summer we have to bring a selection of year 6 books for moderation, and the data for our year 6 is going to be collected by the diocese, which leads me to wonder what's going to happen with that data and how is that going to be used. Is it to inform or is it to judge? So when you've got those constrictions at primary school, I just wonder, moving into secondary, how we can liaise more, because like you guys, you've got your curriculum and your syllabus that you have to cover, so do we. And like Father John says, we are limited in time. So for the pastoral, as I would call it, side of things, that's almost becoming squeezed at secondary, and it's approaching that at primary.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the interesting things which has made if we start with the GCSEs, the fascinating thing about the annex that was produced by the DFE with the CES is it actually sets out this whole core set of knowledge. It's not necessarily focused on skills and so on. It's actually a bank of knowledge. It's what students need to know at this point. And the fascinating thing, potentially over the next couple of years, is the question is, do we want to, or can we then transpose that? So we actually have a set of knowledge that we want students to know at Key Stage 3, a set of knowledge that we want them to know at Key Stage 2 and Key Stage 1. Is that what we want to do? I think we'd all agree RE is more than just a set of knowledge, but actually that's quite an interesting start point for us to have. It's one of my worries that kind of with, obviously, the People of God, Key Stage 3, The Way, the Truth and Life, which was revised a few years ago, and obviously Come and See in the primary school, I just wonder if we are going to have to revisit all of them again because of this.
Oh, the changes further
Yeah,
on, yeah.
exactly, because of that change that's happened. And I kind of do want to make it clear that I think, if I apologise if it came across as a criticism of what goes on in primary school, that wasn't the intention. I think actually maybe the primary school should be teaching them who the Pope and who their diocese is, but actually should that not be? Okay, I agree that they probably are. My point being, if you go to Mass on a regular basis, surely you would have perhaps a better idea of what your diocese and who your Pope is.
I can tell you
And
a
so-
story. I used to teach in a Catholic school in Fort William. We had the bishop come round, and the little child said, "Are you Catholic?" Now,
Brilliant.
you know, that's just classic.
Yeah.
But this is the thing, just to recognise what we've been talking about, this is the thing of where are we? We're in a moment of missionary activity.
Mm.
So you are right.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is, these are things that they would know if they're in a practicing Catholic family. They are not. This is where we are.
And I think just very quickly, that's why we have to explicitly teach it. We do need to teach them who the Pope is, what their diocese is, and so on. We need to be explicit in our teaching.
Right at the back again.
I just wanted to pick up on how you followed up John's comments and talk about missionary activity. And I'm very mindful of being the 50th anniversary of Charisma and Educationis and the Vatican Declaration. That document, you know, the modern magisterium, we have to educate children who are strangers to the faith. So I think John's point about how ethically, spiritually, morally, should we be foisting a liturgical celebration on them and have teachers patrolling around when you know there's only 30% who are practicing Catholic? We have to care about missionary territory. We have to care for their educational needs, and without seeking to, the church was very clear 50 years ago that we shouldn't see it as like you know prime missionary territory. There must be an element of we're serving those children. There's lots of Catholic schools around the world where, and again, the example from Ethiopia I think was that yes, a small community is serving. Majority of the children at that school are not Catholic, and so they leave that school as good Muslims, good Hindus, and great atheists, and that's because they've been educated well in a Catholic school. And so that's what our church is saying to us as a challenge. So we have to do Catholic. That's that.
Okay, no, David, thank you very much, sister. Yeah, go ahead.
I think that actually says a lot right there. But I mean, we don't. If we're really honest, surely we don't really want to be in a Catholic school coming out with good Muslims. Good. I mean, we want good people. But if you're talking about a Catholic school, and what's it for? I think we just need to make a distinction as to what the mission of a Catholic school is, and we need to bear that in mind all the time.
Yeah, but the church has asked to educate those who are strange to the faith without attempting to proselytise them. And of course, the other document, of course, would be our respect and love and devotion for other religions, and if that young person grows up and they've been educated well and they become stronger in their Islamic faith because they've been challenged, nurtured, supported, and being in a caring community for 11 years of education, maybe we should be proud of that, not see that as a failure. But I mean, it's an interesting thing. I mean, the church gives us these challenges, and that's why I think it's interesting to reread that declaration about strangers to the faith.
One more
Sister,
point.
reply.
We have a fantastic heritage as Catholics of faith and reason,
Yeah.
which the Islamic religion does not have. By their own admission, and if you do read up on it, we should, as it's been pointed out several times in this conference, perhaps be looking at this, the philosophical underpinnings to the marriage of faith and reason. So at the end of the day, if there are non-Catholics in the school, they come out as good individuals, or so be it. But our focus as Catholic educators, is for in a Catholic school, should be Catholicism.
But that's not what the Church has reminded us of the Vatican City.
I think Gravissimum Educationis, which is what you're referring to, Second Vatican Council, 50th anniversary this year, speaking about Catholic education and its interface with culture, certainly is what you're referring to. I'm not so sure whether we would be such that we would say that we can interface with culture, and we would not be speaking with an intention that those who are listening would have an opportunity to encounter Jesus Christ. Because I think actually Gravissimum Educationis is actually part of the missionary activity of the Church, which is to bring Jesus Christ into culture through education, which is always at the which is at the cutting edge, if you like, of the conversation which culture has. But perhaps we should close down that debate just for a second, if that's okay. I don't want to be too much of a despot. I'm kind of enjoying it, and we'll see if there's other aspects that we'd like to bring up.
I just wanted to throw something out that I've noticed in the last few years of teaching in a Catholic school is that when I started teaching in a Catholic secondary school, there were more boys than girls. Okay? But the gender issue is completely flipped. In the last 3 entering years, we have more girls than boys. And I don't think that's because there's something in the water. I think it's that more parents in the past were opting to send their sons for, they get more discipline or whatever. And I think parents now are opting to send their daughters to protect them from what goes on in state schools that's quite abusive for young girls. And this was in the secondary school I taught at, and then recently I was at a mass in my parish primary school, and they came in, it was a whole school mass, and it was like skewed, 2/3 female, 1/3 male. And I thought, is this a trend that's going on across Catholic schools? Because that's something that no one's mentioned today, and I wonder if it's something that needs to be considered.
Do you want to address?
No, sorry, no.
All right, okay. I think, would you like to address?
No, I'm just going to ask Andy.
Okay, I'd like to address. I think within, it is not something that we have noticed particularly, certainly in Lancaster Diocese, among with our schools. We are one of those dioceses where the vast majority of our schools are educating simply the people who want to come. We very rarely turn them away because they are not Catholics, unless it's in Lytham. Okay, so we're kind of because that's the name. It's just to do with numbers. That's all. And numbers is one of the manipulation games. So it's just to do with numbers. What I would say, where what you are saying resonates slightly, is that within Preston, where we educate large swathes of the Muslim community, certainly Muslim girls will be accessing our education. So I can see it there of what you're saying. And I'm not so sure that the rest are sort of so awake to that. Could we go here, and then hopefully we'll have time also?
But firstly, I'm sort of sat here as a Catholic educator, and sometimes you see things and you pause and you reflect about it, and I think, yeah, that's interesting. The one comment that I think upset me today, and I think it and I don't think upset in the way of challenged, was the RE colouring conversation, and it was slightly, surprised to see a fellow professional reinforce that one, because as RE teachers, we do all have to live up to the teaching standards. Yeah, and there's some outstanding RE that's going on, and I work with training of teachers, and I work, across several different areas, and I've got experience across several different dioceses, and I don't think that is a fair reflection. And I think also we set the culture within our schools. So if our culture within our schools is not what we want it to be, then we are the solution to that as well. And I just think that that raises for us an interesting challenge. You know, there's that poem by Auden, isn't it, about the Holocaust? You know, how basically nobody stood up and nobody challenged. And then,
Yeah, I mean,
let Charlotte. Do you want to speak to that? Okay. No, go ahead.
Some of my most popular blogs that I've ever written have been about bad RE, and I think on occasion, I don't think it's necessarily highlighting it, but I think it does need to be addressed and challenged. And I think you're absolutely right. I think Catholic schools should have a higher standard of RE that goes in the classroom, but there is lots of bad RE out there across the spectrum, primary school, secondary school, and so on. And I think it does need to be, in some ways, challenged by highlighting it. Yes, it's upsetting when we hear it. Yes, it fills us with absolute despair. I don't think it does our profession down, because actually, if we don't highlight it, then it just gets ignored.
What's the evidence?
But that's my point. We do highlight it and we do challenge it because we are professionals.
And we want to. Let's have one final question that I think was here, and then we'll wind this up.
All education programmes in Catholic education are assessed by the use of levels that come from the National Board of Religious Inspectors and Advisors. I notice in England now that they're getting rid of levels, but the Catholic advisors have told us, no, levels are there to stay, we must use the levels. Going back to the primary school teacher with the confines of the curriculum and the word of and the mention of data, are the levels actually causing religious illiteracy rather than religious literacy? And further bottom question, with the new annexes to the GCSE specs, and will that filter down to Key Stage 3, and will the bishops have to go, are these levels relevant anymore?
Who wants to take that?
It all comes down to really, I mean, with levels, it's a great idea in theory, but in practice what it does is, if you're not a very skilled teacher and you apply levels, then your judgments are going to be all over the place. And I think the idea of getting rid of levels is really to try and put more emphasis on the importance of professional judgment and to try and get people to really think about what they're assessing rather than just to sort of tick a box, if you see what I mean. But if you get rid of levels and you've still got a teacher that's not very good, you're just still going to have an assessment that's not very good. I mean, the system itself doesn't change the ground material that you've got, and thinking that it will is a fool's paradise, really. What we've really got to do is to make sure that we've got teachers that are really good and they're really engaged and they're really professional and really supported. And if we do that, whether we're using levels or whether we're using some other system of assessment, we're going to have better teaching and better learning. Of course, that's a rather tricky answer, isn't it?
I think what you've got to remember is the Nibria are, I don't know if it's hopeful or what, that there will be a government announced replacement for levels. They think that there may well be a time in near future where the government realise they've made a mistake getting rid of levels and reintroduce something, at which point they'll act. So that's why their directive is keep with them for the time being, because hopeful, I think, is probably the right word, that will happen. I don't know.
It's an aspect of modern education, of course. For those of you you're perhaps not familiar, levels is all about the skills, and then curriculum content, of course, is about content. The very first lecture that we had, the philosophical one, of course, was talking about the marriage between skills and content, and possibly that the divorce, if it's so separated, is not good for education. I'm going to give the primary head teacher the last word here, but it must be 15 seconds and no more.
Very quick. It was talking about Catholic teachers in Catholic schools and the reasons why they're not in there, the workload aspect of having to teach RE, be inspected in RE, produce the data in RE. That is quite a large workload extra that they don't get in a non-Catholic school.
Absolutely, and that's why it's such a joy to be in a Catholic school. Thank you very much to our speakers. Thank you very much.